I still remember the exact night she said it, the way the word space slipped out of her mouth so casually, like it was something light, harmless, almost necessary. It was late September of 2019, a Friday evening that smelled like burnt popcorn and rain. We were sitting on the couch of our small apartment in Portland, Oregon, the one with the faded blue walls and the creaky floorboards that groaned every time I walked toward the kitchen. It was supposed to be movie night, our thing since college, but something about her felt off that day. She'd been distant for weeks, and I could feel it. You know that kind of silence that fills the room, heavy and suffocating, where even the sound of breathing feels too loud? That was us. And when she said she needed some space, I tried to play it cool, nodding like I understood, but inside my chest collapsed in on itself. At the time, I convinced myself it wasn't what it sounded like. People needed breaks sometimes. Work stress. Mental exhaustion. That's what she said on a she was tired, overwhelmed. I believed her because I wanted to. Because I loved her. Because after 5 years together, you don't want to imagine the alternative. That maybe love isn't enough anymore. Her name was Samantha, but everyone called her Sam. She was the kind of woman who lit up a room without trying. Funny, sharp, effortlessly confident. When we met in college back in 2014, she was studying graphic design, and I was majoring in mechanical engineering. Two worlds that didn't really mix, but somehow we did. I met her at a friend's Halloween party. She was dressed as Lara Croft. I was a half-hearted Tony Stark with a glowing LED taped to my chest. I still remember her smirk when she saw me struggling to keep the light from falling off. That night, we talked for hours about everything from Pixar movies to our weirdest childhood fears. She told me she was terrified of deep water. I told her I hated clowns. It was stupid, random, but it felt like home. Over the years, we built a life together piece by piece. A shared Spotify playlist, Sunday morning pancakes. A little rescue cat named Oliver who liked to sleep between us. When we graduated, she got a job at a boutique marketing firm downtown, and I landed an engineering position at a startup that made eco-friendly electric bikes. We moved into that tiny apartment on Hawthorne Boulevard with the string lights and mismatched furniture. It wasn't much, but it was ours. Everything seemed perfect, until it wasn't. Looking back now, the red flags were there, quiet and unassuming, hiding in the corners of ordinary days. Like the way she started staying late at work more often, saying she had client projects that ran past 9 p.m. Or how she started taking her phone into the bathroom, saying she was scrolling Pinterest for design inspiration. I noticed the shift in her tone, too. The way her laughter with me started sounding polite, not real. But love makes you blind. It really does. I told myself she was just tired. That I was overthinking, that maybe I'd become too predictable. Same takeout spots, same weekend routines. I thought maybe she needed excitement, and I blamed myself for not being enough of it. There was one night in late August that stands out. She came home smelling like cologne that wasn't mine. I remember hugging her, breathing her in, and freezing for a second. It was faint, like sandalwood and tobacco, not her usual floral perfume. I didn't say anything then. I told myself maybe she hugged someone goodbye at work. Stupid, right? But I couldn't bear the thought of accusing her. The fear of losing her was worse than the possibility of being lied to. In those weeks before she asked for space, I started trying harder. Little things, cooking her favorite pasta, planning weekend hikes, even buying her that coffee machine she'd been eyeing online. She smiled, thanked me, kissed me, but it all felt like muscle memory. The warmth wasn't there anymore. I started noticing she was on her phone constantly, her face lit by that blue glow even at 2 a.m. When I'd roll over, she'd quickly turn the screen away, saying she was just checking emails. I wanted to believe it. God, I really did. And then came that night. She sat on the edge of the couch, legs crossed, eyes avoiding mine. She said she felt mentally drained, that she didn't know who she was anymore, that she needed some time, a few weeks, maybe a month, to figure herself out. I remember nodding slowly, pretending to be understanding, even supportive, but inside I was screaming. I didn't ask if she was seeing someone else. I didn't want to know the answer. I told her to take all the time she needed, that I'd be here when she was ready. When she packed her overnight bag, she said she'd stay at a friend's place. Megan, one of her coworkers from the firm. Megan was nice. I'd met her a couple of times. She was newly single, always talking about girls' nights and finding herself. It made sense. I didn't question it. For the first few days, I tried to stay calm. I texted her good morning, told her I hoped she was okay. Sometimes she replied, sometimes she didn't. The messages started getting shorter, from "I miss you too" to "thanks." Eventually, they stopped altogether. The silence ate at me. Every hour felt like a week. I kept telling myself she'd come back, that she just needed to clear her head. I buried myself in work, went running every morning, tried to keep the apartment clean like she'd like it. But the emptiness was unbearable. Every little thing reminded me of her favorite mug, the pink toothbrush still sitting in the holder, the sweater she'd left draped over the chair. A month passed, then 6 weeks, then 2 months. Every now and then I'd see her post on Instagram. Nothing too revealing, just coffee cups, sunsets, random art, but she never posted her face. That's when my gut started twisting in ways I couldn't ignore. Something wasn't right. It was early December when the truth started to unravel. I remember it was cold, the kind of Portland winter that soaks into your bones. I'd just finished work and stopped at a local grocery store to grab some beer. As I walked out, I saw a familiar car parked near the entrance, her car. A silver Honda Civic with the same dent near the rear bumper that I'd accidentally caused while backing out of our garage a year earlier. I froze. My heart started pounding. At first, I thought maybe she was shopping there too. Maybe I'd bump into her in one of the aisles, maybe she'd smile, maybe we'd talk. But then, as I waited near my truck, I saw her. She was walking out, laughing. Her hair tied up in a messy bun, scarf around her neck. She looked happy, genuinely happy. And beside her was a man I'd never seen before. He was tall, broad-shouldered, maybe a few years older than me. He had his hand on the small of her back, familiar, possessive. They were holding grocery bags together, bumping shoulders, laughing like a couple who'd been doing this for months. For a moment, I couldn't move. The world around me went quiet, like all the city noise had been sucked out. My chest tightened. My hands shook. I wanted to believe it was someone else, that I was mistaken. But it wasn't. It was her, and just like that, everything inside me cracked open. I didn't confront her right there. I couldn't. I just sat in my truck, staring at them as they loaded their bags into his car. Not hers, his. A dark blue Ford SUV. When they drove off, I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the empty parking spot. That was the moment I realized the space she needed wasn't between us. It was with him, and the worst part? I still loved her. Even after everything, even after that gut-wrenching scene in the parking lot, some part of me wanted her to turn around, to see me, to explain it away. I wanted to believe there was still a version of us that could be fixed. But deep down, I knew. That version was gone. Still, I didn't say anything. Not yet. I went home, sat on the couch, and stared at the blank TV screen for hours. The apartment felt different now, not empty, but haunted. Every object had meaning, every corner a memory. I could almost hear her laughter echoing faintly in the walls. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept replaying every moment. Every time she said she was tired, every late night at work, every time her phone buzzed and she smiled a little too quickly. The puzzle pieces all clicked together, forming an image I'd been too blind to see. The betrayal wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was slow, silent, like water seeping through cracks until the whole foundation collapses, and mine just had. But that was only the beginning. Because once you've seen the truth, pretending becomes impossible, and pretending was all I had left. That night, I promised myself I wouldn't spiral. I'd get answers, not out of anger, but because I needed closure. I needed to know why. I just didn't realize how far that need would take me. Or what it would destroy next. After that night in the parking lot, something inside me changed. It wasn't instant rage or even heartbreak. It was a quiet kind of numbness, like someone had turned down the volume on life itself. The morning after, I went to work as if nothing had happened. Smiled at coworkers, answered emails, ate lunch alone in the cafeteria, but everything felt off, detached. Like I was watching my own life through glass. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her. That laugh, that look of ease she hadn't worn around me in months. It played over and over in my head until it became unbearable. For a few days, I tried to convince myself I was overreacting. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe he was just a friend or a client. But then I'd remember the way his hand rested on her back, the way her body leaned toward him, too natural, too familiar. That wasn't a colleague. That was someone she trusted, someone she was intimate with. Still, I couldn't bring myself to confront her right away. I told myself I needed proof. Something concrete. Because a part of me, small but stubborn, still wanted her to tell me the truth on her own. So I started watching her social media more closely, something I swore I'd never do. She wasn't posting anything suspicious, but I noticed the subtle things. Her captions had a different tone now, lighter somehow, more playful. She'd use emojis she never used before. One day, she posted a photo of a coffee cup from a cafe I didn't recognize. But in the reflection of the glass, I could faintly see a man's arm across from her. I zoomed in until my eyes hurt, and that was when I knew for sure. It was the same flannel shirt the guy at the grocery store had been wearing. That was my breaking point. I remember sitting in my apartment that night, the only sound being Oliver's faint purring beside me. The air felt heavy, like grief had weight. I wanted to scream, to break something, to drive to wherever she was and demand answers, but instead I just sat there, staring at my reflection in the dark TV screen. I thought about all the times I'd been patient. The nights I stayed up waiting for her. The weekends she said she was with Megan. The mornings she'd come home with a new perfume on her skin. It was all there, I just hadn't wanted to see it. By midnight, I made up my mind. I needed to see her. Not to fight, not even to win her back. Just to understand how someone could go from loving me so completely to sharing her life with someone else without a word. The next evening, I texted her. Just a simple, "Hey, can we talk?" It took her almost a full day to reply. She finally said, "I think it's better if we give it more time. I'm not ready to talk yet." That line, "not ready to talk yet," it broke something in me. I stared at those words for a long time, my hands trembling. I realized then she had no intention of coming back. Whatever she was doing, whoever she was with, that was her new reality. I was just a chapter she'd quietly closed. Still, I couldn't let it go. Not without closure. So I did something I'm not proud of. Megan, her supposed friend, followed me on Instagram. I'd never messaged her before, but one night, out of pure desperation, I sent a casual message. "Hey, hope you're good. Haven't heard from Sam lately. Is she doing okay?" She saw it but didn't reply for hours. Then finally she sent back, "Yeah, she's fine. Just needs some time. She's figuring things out." It was vague, too polished, like something rehearsed. I asked, "She's staying with you, right?" And that's when she stopped responding altogether. The silence said more than words ever could. For a while, I felt like I was losing my mind. I'd go to work, come home, and sit in the dark, replaying every detail of our relationship. What did I miss? What did I do wrong? Was there a moment when she decided I wasn't enough? The worst part wasn't even the betrayal, it was the uncertainty. The not knowing how long it had been going on, or how easily she'd been able to lie to me while sharing my bed. One night, about a week before Christmas, I got drunk. I'm not proud of that either. I was sitting on the floor, surrounded by empty bottles, when I remembered something. The Find My app we'd set up years ago when she kept losing her phone. It was still connected. At first, I hesitated. It felt invasive, wrong. But curiosity and heartbreak are dangerous together. They make you do things you'd never imagine yourself doing. I opened the app, and there it was, her location pinging from somewhere in the Pearl District. A high-rise apartment building near the waterfront. Not Megan's neighborhood. Not anywhere she should have been. I stared at that blinking blue dot for a long time. Then, almost without thinking, I grabbed my keys. The city was quiet that night, the streets slick with rain. I remember every traffic light feeling longer than usual. By the time I reached the building, it was close to midnight. I parked a few blocks away and just sat there, watching the entrance from my car. After about 15 minutes, I saw her. She came out of the building's lobby wearing a long coat, laughing, the same laugh I'd once fallen in love with. But she wasn't alone. The man from the grocery store was with her again. They walked arm in arm toward the corner, where a black car pulled up to pick them up. I watched as she leaned in, kissed him, and then climbed into the car. It was like watching a life that used to be mine play out in someone else's hands. I didn't follow them. I couldn't. My chest felt like it was caving in, my vision blurry from tears. I just sat there in the car, rain hitting the windshield, until I couldn't breathe anymore. That night, I deleted the app, turned off my phone, and cried harder than I ever had in my life. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I didn't eat. I didn't talk to anyone. Days blurred together. Christmas came and went like a dull ache in the background. I didn't even bother putting up the small tree we used to decorate together. It wasn't just heartbreak, it was humiliation. I kept thinking about how she'd looked me in the eyes and said she needed space, when in reality, she'd already filled it with someone else. Friends started to notice something was off. My coworker Ben asked me one day if everything was okay. I just shrugged. I didn't have the energy to explain. How do you tell someone that the person you thought was your forever simply disappeared into someone else's life without a second thought? By mid-January, I'd lost 10 pounds. I was barely sleeping. Every night, I'd wake up at 3 a.m., reach for my phone, and have to remind myself not to text her. Sometimes I'd open our old messages and scroll through them like some kind of punishment, rereading her I love yous that no longer meant anything. And then one day, she messaged me. It was a random Tuesday afternoon. Her name popped up on my screen for the first time in months. My heart stopped. The message was short. Hey, can we talk soon? I stared at it for 10 minutes before replying, sure, when? She said, tonight maybe? That evening, she came by the apartment. I hadn't seen her since September. When she walked in, it felt like no time had passed and yet an entire lifetime had. She looked different, happier. Her hair was shorter, styled differently. She smelled like a perfume I didn't recognize. We sat across from each other, an invisible wall between us. She said she was sorry. Sorry for how she handled things. Sorry for not being honest. Sorry for hurting me. She said she didn't mean for things to happen the way they did, and that she'd needed time to figure out her feelings. And then she admitted it. There was someone else. It had started as friendship and turned into more. She said she didn't want to hurt me, but she'd fallen for him. I sat there silent as she spoke. I don't remember most of what she said, just the sound of her voice breaking, the way she couldn't look me in the eyes. When she left, I didn't stop her. I didn't shout. I didn't beg. I just sat there long after the door closed, staring at the floor, feeling like a ghost in my own home. That night, something inside me hardened. I realized there was no going back. Whatever love we had, it was buried now, deep under the weight of betrayal and lies. But even then, I didn't hate her. Not yet. Hate would have been easier. What I felt instead was emptiness, a void so deep it echoed. In the days that followed, I started trying to rebuild, or at least pretend to. I deleted our photos, unfollowed her accounts, packed away the things that reminded me of her. But healing isn't linear. Some mornings I'd wake up feeling fine. Other days, one random song or smell would send me spiraling back into the memories. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't just break your heart. It rewires you. It changes how you see trust, how you see love, even how you see yourself. But I didn't know yet that this was only the first storm. That sometimes closure isn't something you find, it's something you create, and soon I'd start creating mine. After Sam left, the apartment felt like a mausoleum. Every corner held a memory I couldn't escape. Oliver, our cat, sensed it too. He wouldn't sleep in my bed anymore, curling instead on the armchair where she used to sit. The silence was deafening. Even the city outside seemed complicit, the hum of traffic and distant chatter only highlighting how alone I was. I kept replaying everything in my head, every smile she gave me, every late night she stayed working, every excuse she ever used. Work became unbearable. I would stare at my computer screen, pretending to focus on CAD designs and schematics, but my mind was elsewhere. I'd scroll through news articles about couples, friends' social media posts, even random stories about betrayal and infidelity. The more I read, the more it gnawed at me. I wanted answers, closure, anything to make sense of why she'd chosen him over me. My friends tried to reach out. Ben came over one night with a six-pack and a concerned expression. He asked how I was holding up. I mumbled something about being fine, because what else could I say? That the person I loved for 5 years had walked out of my life and replaced me with someone else? I didn't want to admit how hollow I felt. Even family noticed. My mom called one Sunday afternoon. "Shubham, you've been quiet lately," she said. "Is everything okay with Sam?" I lied. I told her we were just taking a break, that everything was normal. My dad didn't ask. He just listened, probably suspecting more than I was willing to admit. Sleep became a battleground. I'd lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the memory of her leaving, the way her coat swished against the floor, the man's hand on her back, the casual smile that wasn't meant for me. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, my heart racing. Nights blurred into mornings, and mornings into restless, endless days. I tried to distract myself, throwing myself into work and running. I ran long distances through Portland's damp streets, my breath fogging in the cold air. But running couldn't outrun the thoughts, couldn't outrun her. Every corner of the city reminded me of something. The coffee shop where we met for our first date, the bridge where we watched the sunset, the bookstore where we got lost for hours. It felt like the city itself was mocking me. Then came the anger. It started quietly, a simmering frustration that I told myself was normal. But it grew. I caught myself scrolling her Instagram again, checking for the tiniest hint that she was with him. Seeing them together, laughing, living life, felt like a punch to the gut every single time. My mind became obsessed with the why. Why her? Why him? Why me? I even drove past their old neighborhoods looking for signs. Stopped by the Pearl District building where I'd seen them that night. Nothing. Just the same high-rise, same parking lot. But my brain filled in the gaps. I imagined them inside, laughing, talking, making plans, a life that should have been mine. I became paranoid. Every notification on my phone made me jump. Every sound at the apartment door made me freeze. I started imagining her calling, telling me she'd come back, and every time it didn't happen, the emptiness returned, heavier than before. Friends tried to pull me out. Ben suggested I go on a trip. "Just get out of the apartment for a few days," he said. I agreed reluctantly and flew to Seattle for a long weekend. I thought seeing the city, meeting new people, breaking the routine might help. It didn't. Everywhere I went, I thought about her. The bar where we had our first drink, the streets where we wandered aimlessly, the coffee shop that always had her favorite caramel latte. No distance could erase her presence, even work suffered. My projects lagged. Deadlines slipped. Emails went unanswered. My boss eventually called me into his office, concern etched on his face. "Shubham, is everything okay? You're not yourself lately." I nodded, said something vague about stress, but inside I felt like I was unraveling. By late January, my health started deteriorating. I wasn't eating properly, my energy was gone, and I kept having panic attacks at night. Sudden, sharp bursts of fear that left me gasping for air. I couldn't sit still. Every object in the apartment reminded me of her. The pink toothbrush, the coffee mugs, the string lights we hung together. All of it felt like betrayal embodied in things. Then came the rumors. A coworker mentioned casually that Sam had been seeing him, the man from the Pearl District, for months before she left. I didn't know if it was true, but I wanted to believe it. The thought made my stomach turn, but in some twisted way. It also validated the gut feeling I'd had all along. It was during this time that I began questioning myself, not just my relationship with her, but everything. My self-worth, my ability to trust, my judgment. I thought about all the moments I'd ignored red flags, rationalized her lies, convinced myself that love could fix everything. And now I felt utterly foolish. I even started pulling away from friends. I didn't want to explain the storm inside me again and again. It was easier to be alone. It was easier to sit with my thoughts, painful as they were, than to try to put a mask of normalcy on for someone else. Then, one night in February, I hit rock bottom. I remember it vividly. I came home from work, exhausted, emotionally drained, and collapsed on the couch. Oliver jumped onto my chest, purring, and I just stared at him, tears streaming down my face. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to feel some kind of release. But there was nothing. Just numbness. I thought about her. About the betrayal, the lies, the ease with which she had replaced me. I remembered every time she said she loved me, every promise, every "we'll be okay," all meaningless. And I realized something that shook me to my core. The person I had loved wasn't the person I thought she was. I had invested my entire heart in someone who never truly existed in the way I imagined. For days, I didn't eat. I barely moved. I started drinking more, trying to drown the pain, but alcohol only made it worse. My apartment became a prison, my memories my captors. And yet, somewhere beneath the hurt, beneath the rage and heartbreak, a spark of something else began to flicker. I'm not sure when it started. Maybe during one of those long, sleepless nights. Maybe while watching Oliver curl up on the armchair as if to tell me it would be okay. But I realized I couldn't stay in this state forever. I began to write things down. Not letters to her, not confessions, just my thoughts, my anger, my confusion, my pain. I started journaling every night, spilling my heart onto paper, trying to untangle the chaos in my head. I wrote about the betrayal, the lies, the heartbreak. I wrote about my own mistakes, my own failures, the moments I ignored intuition for the sake of love. It was painful, but it helped. For the first time in months, I felt like I was reclaiming a piece of myself. Slowly, I started to take small steps. Cooking my own meals again, going for walks, forcing myself to sleep at reasonable hours. I started talking to friends again, cautiously. I didn't spill everything, but I let them see enough to know I was trying to heal. Even my career began to recover. I started focusing on my projects, putting myself into work with a renewed intensity. I realized that for months I'd been operating on autopilot, letting life pass by while I wallowed in betrayal. Now I wanted to reclaim my time, my energy, my purpose. And yet, even as I rebuilt myself, there was a lingering thought, a question I couldn't shake. How could someone you loved so completely betray you without a second thought? How could she live so freely while I was left drowning in what felt like a lifetime of loss? I tried to avoid it, to bury it, but it kept coming back. In the shower, in the car, in the middle of the night, always, relentlessly, like a shadow that wouldn't leave. By early March, I was functioning again, but not healed. Not fully. I was stronger, more aware, more cautious, but the scars remained. I'd caught glimpses of her on social media now and then, always happy, always moving on, and each time a part of me ached, another part of me burned. I realized then that this was the nature of betrayal. It wasn't a single moment. It was a series of echoes, small, painful reminders that lingered long after the event itself. And to survive, I had to decide what I would do with those echoes. Would I let them destroy me? Or would I let them forge something stronger? I didn't have the answer yet. But I knew one thing for certain. I wouldn't stay broken forever. That realization, small as it was, marked the beginning of the next stage of my journey. The stage where I would start to reclaim control. Where I would stop being a passive observer of my own pain and start shaping the story of my life, and in some strange, dark way, that thought gave me hope. By mid-March, I realized that merely surviving wasn't enough. Surviving felt hollow, like I was just existing in the shadows of my own life while she thrived somewhere else. I had to take action, not to get her back, not even out of revenge at first, but to reclaim my sense of self. I started small. I joined a local gym I'd passed dozens of times but never stepped inside. At first it was awkward. The smell of rubber mats and sweat, the clanking of weights, the polished mirrors reflecting every insecurity I had about myself. But slowly it became therapy. Every drop of sweat, every strained breath, every sore muscle reminded me that I was still here. That I could still feel. That I could still fight. I also reconnected with old friends I'd neglected. People who had been important before Sam consumed my entire world. One of them, Priya, suggested I start journaling publicly, in a blog or forum. At first I laughed. Who would want to read my whining about a breakup? But she was insistent, said writing could be cathartic, a way to process my emotions and even help others going through the same thing. I started posting, cautiously at first. I wrote about heartbreak, betrayal, and the slow, ugly aftermath of loving someone who didn't love you the same way. The feedback was immediate. People messaged me privately, telling me their stories, thanking me for putting words to feelings they couldn't express. That tiny spark of connection made me feel alive again. And then, as April arrived, the anger I'd buried began to surface, not just at her, but at the universe for allowing someone to betray me so completely. I realized that I couldn't fully heal without confronting her. Not to beg, not to plead, but to set things straight. I wanted closure on my terms. It started innocently enough. I followed her social media accounts again, but this time with a plan, not desperation. I wanted to know everything, not because I wanted to punish her, but because knowledge would give me power over my own story. I needed the truth, unfiltered, undeniable. That's when I discovered something she hadn't intended me to see. Subtle slips. A photo from her vacation in late February. The background showed a balcony, the kind that only existed in the apartment building I'd seen in the Pearl District. And there he was, almost accidentally captured. The man from the grocery store laughing with her as she leaned into him. It wasn't speculation anymore. It was confirmation. She hadn't just cheated. She had moved on while leaving me suspended in limbo. The betrayal wasn't about love or attraction. It was about deception, about the way she had orchestrated her exit like a master manipulator. I won't lie. Part of me wanted to expose her. I imagined sending screenshots to her friends, her family, even co-workers. I imagined the shock on her face, the disruption of the carefully curated life she had built while I suffered in silence. But another part of me hesitated. That wasn't me. I didn't want to stoop to her level. I wanted power, but not revenge born from petty cruelty. Instead, I decided on a different approach. I focused on myself. I invested in my career, pushing projects that had languished on the back burner. I saved aggressively, upgraded my apartment, redecorated it in ways that reminded me of me and not of us. I started dressing better, working on my posture, my confidence, the subtle things that make someone feel like they own their space in the world. And the more I improved, the more I noticed the difference in how people responded to me. Colleagues who had once brushed me off now sought my input. Friends who had drifted away started asking for my company again. Even strangers in cafes or the gym treated me with a quiet respect that I hadn't felt in months. By May, I realized something powerful. The only validation I needed was my own. I didn't need her approval, her affection, or her recognition. I was reclaiming my life, slowly, deliberately, with intent, but part of me wasn't satisfied with mere self-improvement. The betrayal had burned deep enough that I wanted the world to know, not to shame her, but to reclaim the narrative. I started writing a longer piece for my blog, detailing the journey, not naming names, not pointing fingers, but describing the emotional hell of being deceived by someone you trusted completely. I wanted it raw, unfiltered, honest, and as I wrote, I realized something. I wasn't just writing for myself. I was writing for anyone who had ever been blindsided, betrayed, or abandoned. I was writing to turn my pain into something tangible, something meaningful. One evening, while editing the post, I got a message from someone I didn't know. Your story. It's exactly what I've been going through. Thank you for putting it into words. That message hit me harder than anything else had. I realized my pain had power, not destructive power, but transformative power. And for the first time in months, I felt a sense of control, a sense of agency that Sam had tried to strip from me. Then came the bold step. I decided I would see her one last time. Not for closure, not for confrontation, but to assert myself, to show her that I had emerged from the ashes stronger, untouchable by her betrayal. It was a sunny Saturday in June. I drove to the same Pearl District apartment building where I had seen them that night months ago. I didn't know if she'd be there or if I would even have the courage to speak to her, but I knew I had to go. I parked a few blocks away, walking briskly, feeling the warm Portland sun on my face. My chest felt tight, but not from heartbreak this time, from anticipation, from the electricity of reclaiming power. I saw her leaving the lobby. She looked exactly the same, confident, composed, unaware that I had been following the path of her life. But this time I wasn't the same person. I stood taller, my shoulders squared, my expression calm. The difference wasn't in how I looked. It was in the aura, the quiet assertion of someone who had survived betrayal and refused to be broken. She noticed me. Her eyes widened for a fraction of a second, then flicked away. The man she was with wasn't there this time. I approached her slowly, not to accuse, not to confront, just to be seen, to assert my existence in the narrative she had tried to rewrite without me. We exchanged a brief, awkward acknowledgement. No apologies, no recriminations. I didn't need them. I realized that the power she had over me, the power to hurt, to destabilize, to disrupt my life, had dissolved. I had taken it back. As I walked away, I felt a strange sense of peace. The anger had cooled. The grief had shifted. What remained was clarity. I was no longer defined by her actions, by her betrayal. I was defined by how I rose from it. In the weeks that followed, I continued to rebuild, to assert myself, to live deliberately. I traveled, met new people, embraced opportunities I had previously ignored. Every small victory, a promotion at work, a weekend trip with friends, a moment of genuine laughter, felt like reclaiming a piece of my soul. And the most important victory, I forgave myself. I forgave myself for loving someone who didn't deserve it, for trusting blindly, for letting my heart be broken. That forgiveness wasn't for her. It was for me. It was the final act of reclaiming the life she tried to steal. By late summer, I realized something profound. Betrayal doesn't just destroy you, it teaches you. It forces you to confront your weaknesses, your boundaries, your self-worth. It can be devastating, yes, but it can also be the catalyst for transformation. I had transformed, and that transformation was mine alone. By the time summer fully settled over Portland, I had become almost unrecognizable to my past self. The person who had sat in the dark, drowning in betrayal, had been replaced with someone sharper, more aware, and unflinchingly honest with himself. I still thought of Sam, of course. How could I not? Those memories were etched into me like scars. But the sting had dulled, replaced with a quiet clarity. Her choices no longer defined me. I started approaching life differently. Small things became victories. I'd wake up in the morning and make coffee just the way I liked it, not the way she had preferred. I'd walk Oliver through the same rainy streets we had once wandered together. But now I noticed the details I had ignored. The smell of fresh paint on a nearby building, the distant notes of a street musician's guitar, the way the rain turned the streetlights into golden streaks. Life was moving and I was moving with it. Work became a place of accomplishment again. I spearheaded a new engineering project at the startup, a program to design more efficient electric bikes for urban commuters. My ideas were taken seriously, my efforts recognized. Promotion talks started circulating. For the first time in months, I felt capable again, as though the betrayal had pushed me not just to survive, but to thrive. Socially, things shifted too. I reconnected with friends I had drifted from during my relationship with Sam. I met new people, friends who weren't tied to my past, who didn't remind me of the life I had lost. And yes, there were dates, awkward and clumsy at first, but slowly more natural. People who laughed at my jokes, listened to my thoughts, and offered companionship without expectation. Those moments weren't replacements for what I had lost. They were reminders that the world hadn't stopped turning, that life hadn't ended with her. One evening in August, I received an unexpected notification on my blog. It was a message from a stranger, someone halfway across the country. I read your story about betrayal. I've been through the same thing, and reading your journey gave me hope. Thank you. I stared at the screen for a long time, feeling a strange combination of pride and humility. My pain, my deepest, rawest pain, had become something meaningful to someone else. That realization settled in my chest like sunlight breaking through clouds. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was turning my experience into something constructive, even inspiring, and then, by some cruel twist of fate or ironic timing, I heard that Sam had moved out of Portland. I don't know how I found out. Maybe it was through a mutual friend, maybe a social media post, but it didn't matter. She had gone, moved on completely. She hadn't even said goodbye. And for the first time, I felt relief. Relief because I no longer carried the weight of waiting, wondering, hoping. Relief because her presence had stopped shaping my emotions, my decisions, my sense of self. And relief because, finally, I could fully own the story of my own life, without her chapter dangling like an unfinished sentence. I even allowed myself to feel gratitude, strange as it sounds. Gratitude for the lessons, however brutal, that her betrayal had forced upon me. I had learned resilience. I had learned discernment. I had learned the immense value of self-respect. I had learned that love, when misplaced, can hurt like fire. But surviving it, rising from it, is what shapes character. By September, I started traveling more. Weekend trips up the Oregon coast, hikes in the Cascades, spontaneous road trips to small towns I'd never seen. Each journey reminded me that life is bigger than one person, bigger than one heartbreak, bigger than the story I had once thought defined me. I also started volunteering at a local youth program, teaching kids about engineering projects and basic mechanics. Something about helping others rebuild their confidence, their skills, mirrored the way I had been reconstructing my own life. The sense of purpose was intoxicating, grounding me in the present, and giving me a future to look forward to, one I could shape on my terms. And somewhere along the way, I realized I had forgiven her, not for her sake, but for mine. Forgiveness wasn't forgetting. It wasn't absolving her of betrayal or deceit. It was releasing the control she had over my emotions. It was a conscious decision to stop letting anger, sadness, and resentment dictate my actions. Forgiving her meant freeing myself finally. There were moments, of course, when the old pain flared up unexpectedly. A song on the radio, a scent in a cafe, a familiar laugh from a stranger, each triggered the memory of what had been. But now, those moments didn't knock me off balance. I observed them, acknowledged them, and let them pass. They were ghosts of a chapter I had survived, not shadows I needed to live under. By late October, I had reached a point I didn't think was possible 3 months prior. I sat in my living room, Oliver curled at my feet, a cup of coffee steaming on the table beside me, and I realized that I was happy. Not manic happiness or the kind that masks pain with adrenaline. A quiet, steady happiness. The kind that comes from knowing you've endured something devastating and come out intact. Wiser, stronger. I even laughed at memories of Sam now. Not bitterly, but with recognition of the absurdity and unpredictability of life. I had loved someone fiercely, been hurt deeply, and survived. And in doing so, I had discovered the power of my own heart, the strength of my own resilience. And the truth was, I no longer needed her presence, or even her acknowledgement, to validate my worth. I had reclaimed it fully for myself. Months later, I met someone new. Her name was Elena, and she was nothing like Sam. Vibrant, grounded, kind, with a sharp sense of humor and a curiosity about life that matched my own. Meeting her wasn't about replacing the past. It was about moving forward, embracing possibilities, and allowing myself to love again without fear or blind devotion. I didn't tell Elena about Sam right away. When I eventually did, I told the story honestly, without shame, without anger. She listened, compassionate and understanding, and it felt liberating to finally speak aloud the experiences that had shaped me. And when she held my hand that night, I realized something remarkable. The future I was stepping into wasn't haunted by my past anymore. Looking back now, I can see it clearly. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the months of despair, they were all necessary. They forced me to confront myself, to examine my choices, my vulnerabilities, and ultimately to find strength I didn't know I had. Betrayal had shattered me, yes. But from the shards, I rebuilt a life that was more vibrant, more authentic, and more resilient than anything I had known before. And Sam? She became a part of my history, a lesson carved into my memory. I no longer hate her. I no longer long for her. I simply acknowledge what was, and move forward with the knowledge that life is too vast, too unpredictable, and too precious to be defined by one person's deceit. In the end, I learned that the greatest victories aren't about revenge or about proving someone wrong. The greatest victories are about reclaiming your own narrative, your own power and your own peace. As I sit here now, in my apartment on a quiet Portland evening, Oliver purring beside me, I realize that happiness isn't about perfection. It's about endurance, growth, and the courage to keep moving forward even after life has tried to break you. I survived betrayal. I survived heartbreak. And I thrived, and that, more than anything, feels like triumph.